You said that system, though, nearly lost her, though. What was the moment when you realized you just couldn't trust exactly, what the doctors were saying to her? Was there a
Yeah.
specific turning
Well,
point?
she was apparently in so much pain that she was like on the floor, like vomiting, and the pain was so bad. She looked like she'd aged 10 plus years. She was in so much pain she could barely move. I realized what she's been doing this whole time and like going all these doctors, and it just wasn't working. And so we really needed to start looking at why this was happening. When it really started becoming my mission to help others, not just band-aid symptoms that they're going through, but actually help them over time resolve the issues that they're dealing with. Root cause and holistic approach are how I define functional medicine. That's ultimately how you're going to identify where the problem's coming from.
Welcome to the Bay Builds. I'm Tracie Domino. Here's a thought that should probably bother you more than it does. Most of today's medicine isn't built to make you well, it's built to manage you being unwell. My guest today calls that sick care, and he has spent his whole career trying to prove that there's a better way. Jimmy Barker is the founder and CEO of BioDesign Wellness Center, voted one of the top wellness centers and med spas in the area, with a reach that runs the whole bay from Wesley Chapel down to Tierra Verde. He's built it on functional medicine, hormone therapy, and aesthetics, and on a rule most doctors would never sign up for. He won't put a protocol in front of a patient until he's tested it on himself first. And this has all worked. Earlier this year, BioDesign was acquired by Agentis Longevity, a national longevity company which took what he built here in Tampa onto a much bigger stage. But none of this started with a business plan. It started with his own mother and a system that nearly lost her. That's where we begin today. Welcome, Jimmy. We're so happy to have you here. So, your whole philosophy traces back to what happened with your mother. Take us there. What did you watch her go through, and when did it stop being her story and start becoming yours?
So growing up, I was a son of two doctors. Actually, my mom was a pediatrician, and I watched as she, helped a lot of people who were sick. But then when it was her turn, she was struggling to get answers. She was going to Western care doctors, and that's what's easily available and what everybody traditionally goes to. And she kind of just chronically started getting worse, and there were some things that were just now looking back, they were blind spots that we didn't see because of the approach that we were taking. And it took quite a few years of me just kind of like hoping that she gets better and not really having solutions. But then uh, as somebody introduced me to longevity care and functional medicine, that started opening my eyes to a different approach, a more holistic approach. And holistic sometimes gets a bad rap as just being kind of woo woo or whatever, but that's not really the case. It's really just looking at all the parts, the root cause, and that's really changed my perspective. Now, as I approach everything come with that's to do with your health, or even right now, she's dealing with shoulder pain, and they want to shoot some, injections and whatnot, and it's like, but why is it happening? And that's when it really started becoming my mission to help others, is watching her go through all this and that transition. As I opened up my weight loss clinic and got into longevity medicine shortly after, it was really seeing the difference of how we could help people get long lasting results and not just band-aid symptoms that they're going through, but actually help them over time resolve the issues that they're dealing with.
That makes sense. So you said that system, though, nearly lost her, though, because they're treating the symptoms because instead of the causes. What was the moment when you realized you just couldn't trust exactly, what the doctors were saying to her? Was there a
Yeah.
specific turning
Well,
point?
so I remember this time when I was actually, it was during COVID, and she was in a state that was shut down, and I get this call that from a friend who said they've never seen her as bad as she is.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't know exactly what that meant because I wasn't there, but she was apparently in so much pain that she was like on the floor, like vomiting, and the pain was so bad they couldn't move her, all these things. And really it's a combination of like a cumulative effect of that point where I just had never seen her in such a bad situation. She looked like she'd aged 10 plus years. She was in so much pain she could barely move. And I realized what she's been doing this whole time and like going all these doctors, and it just wasn't working. And so we really needed to start looking at why this was happening. We dug into her environment and just what's going on with her body. So she was being exposed to mold.
Oh,
And
wow.
while it can seem kind of a weird correlation, mold is one of those things that it just tends to affect the body in so many different ways. She was having tooth issues, joint issues, gut issues, brain issues. And so, as I've learned to look more holistically and even had mold treatments in my practice at one time, we no longer do that. But there's so many things that could be happening when somebody's struggling with their health. And when there's a variety of things like that, that's an indicator it could be something definitely that's not being looked at by the Western medicine approach. She
Sure.
would have to go to a doctor for the pain, like an ortho doctor, then she'd go to the gut doctor, and then the dentist and whatever. And those doctors aren't talking to each other. And we have one body and it's talking to each other all over the place. And a lot of times, these things are interrelated. So it really changed the way I approach my health and my family's and my patients and everything related.
Especially with that external factor, right? Like it's with that cause being something in the environment where, that's just so interesting.
And a hidden cause that most people just don't, she couldn't see it, and
Right.
it wasn't like, oh, my house flooded. Those are obvious
Right.
when that happens, but sometimes it's in the walls, or it's just in the ductwork. It's something that you just don't even see. And certain people are more susceptible. About 25% to 30% of the population tends to have genetic weaknesses towards things like that. Now, there can be parasites, there can be other, issues that people can run into that could also cause problems. It's not just mold is the only thing, but this is one that a lot of times people aren't looking for.
Sure. So before BioDesign, you were on your own health journey. And how bad did it get for you personally? And what did the conventional answers you were given feel like at that time?
Yeah, I mean, so I dealt with things like eczema or gut issues, or, even just things as simple as weight loss. That's, I would say, honestly, where my journey kind of started
Mm.
was, I went through some career challenges back in 07, 08. I was in the financial industry, and not a great place to be when I worked for a bank that had 2,000 people and they shut their doors completely. So that started this kind of spiral down financially and whatnot. And I had all this extra time that I was just learning and teaching myself nutrition. And I had always eaten healthy because my parents are doctors, and
Mm.
I worked out and I played sports and like I did all the things, right? But um, my body composition was fine. It was okay. But as I learned about nutrition, I wasn't even trying to lose weight. I was just naturally eating healthier. And all of a sudden, my body composition started improving dramatically. And I just thought genetically, I didn't have, that ability to look like that. And so when I actually put some effort behind it, it really made me realize that there's another way than what's being taught in kind of the standard like books or podcasts or
Mm.
whatever. There's ways. And so that relates then not just to nutrition, but fitness. I realized that 95% of people, I don't want to say are doing it wrong, but there's a better way. You can avoid more injuries, you can get results faster, etc. And so then that all translates into longevity care and, orthopedics and everything. I'm sure, which, I'm not a specialist in everything, but
Mm.
I at least like to think of it through a lens when I'm dealing with some of these things about what's the source cause of what's happening first and foremost, and what are all the other factors holistically that could be related to this that could help us get a better result.
That's really, really incredible. So now there's a big leap between being frustrated with the system and actually open your own practice
Right.
to do it differently. So what gave you the nerve to build BioDesign rather than just fix your own health and move
Yeah.
on?
Well, I tell you, when your back's against the wall, and that sometimes they say when it's something to the effect of when strength is your only option, you figure out how strong you can be, kind of deal. And when I back in 07, 08, I lost everything. I was ahead financially, my career, everything went back down to starting over. I was counting how much money I had in terms of how many weeks of food I could afford. I got down to 2 weeks, and that was my low point. And I got on my knees, I prayed, I worked my way out of that, and an opportunity presented to me for a weight loss clinic, which I still have today, Aviva Medical Weight Loss. And it was something that somebody else, a friend, was opening, and a location, and I said, you know what, I need to know more about that. It just spoke to me immediately, and I said, this is something that seems to line up with the experiences I've had. My career took a wrong turn. I need to get back on track. And it made sense. And so I was like, this lines up with my passion and I want to help people. And so I started that immediately. It was about 6 months, I was opening up my longevity practice and had a different name at the time, but it's what is called BioDesign Longevity now. And that was the start of the hormones, then the peptides. I mean, we've been doing peptides for over 10 years. It's great to see everybody kind of finding out about them now and excited. But those are an amazing way to really naturally stimulate the body to do what it's already good at. And, nutraceuticals and vitamins and whatnot, supplements along the way, really starting to understand that over the years helped a lot to build like the foundation. Because the way I look at it, if you have your hormones and your nutrients balanced, then that kind of builds that foundation. And then something like peptides can help to really elevate your health from there. So that's the evolution, was really just, being in a situation that my career was up against the wall and I wasn't okay. I had a good education, come from a successful family. Like, I wasn't okay with where my life had headed, and I just was determined that I was going to do something about it.
That's awesome. So now let's just define terms for people, because functional medicine gets thrown around a lot, right? So in your words, what is it actually doing differently from what happens at a regular doctor's visit
Sure.
that you're doing?
Yeah. So, we were just talking for this about my son's at urgent care. Unfortunately, he's sick, and so they're going to do some tests and they're going to treat the symptoms and try to give some medications. But in a situation where there's a chronic issue, that's Western medicine, and that's what Western medicine is good at. Chronic issues where somebody's having trouble losing weight, they're tired all the time, they're having brain fog, things of that nature, digestive issues, whatnot. Those are something that we need to be looking holistically at the entire body and the environment around the body. What could be the root cause? So root cause and holistic approach are how I define functional medicine. That's ultimately how you're going to identify where the problem's coming from. And then the solution is going to need to be holistic, not just let's get the temperature down, or you've got pain in your stomach or whatnot. Let's take something like an antacid just to try to make you feel better. That's actually hurting you long term, and it's not treating the problem. And so we don't want to focus on short-term solutions. We want to focus on the resolution of the problem.
That makes perfect sense, right? So the critique at the center of that work is that mainstream care is like sick care and then treating the symptoms instead of the causes, as you just said. So make the case as strongly as you can, right? And tell us, where does conventional medicine still get it right in the way that your world can't touch? And then where a person listening here would know, where do they need Western medicine and where do they need more of this holistic?
Yeah. So in simplest terms, acute care, you've got a pain, like an extreme pain, like a broken arm, or a fever or something of that issue, and is going to be your Western care. Go to the urgent care, take care of it. And then when you have something that's chronic is the holistic approach, that we need to be looking at the environment, whether it's toxins or even stress, things of that nature, and then looking at the root issues and thinking about how do we treat this holistically, so that we're looking at nutrients, stress, sleep, hormones, those types of things, where it's like, what are all the ways that we can really approach this so that somebody can get better?
So on that note, so if someone's a skeptic out there and they hear functional medicine and hormone therapy, aesthetics, they maybe would wonder when the science ends and where the wellness marketing begins, right? So how do you answer to that person? How do you keep that line clean inside your practice?
Well, luckily, a lot of times when people come to us, they realize that what they've been doing hasn't been working. They may have been going to 3 or 4 different doctors before us. They've been, dealing with this symptom for 10 years, 5, 10 years, whatever the case is, and it's still not better. Or they've been told that they're going to be on a medication the rest of their life. And that doesn't have to be the case. If somebody wants to get better, in most cases they can, but sometimes it takes a little bit more work. It's
Mhm.
not just give them your insurance card, get a medication, feel better. It's okay, I need to invest some time, some money, some effort, and it's going to take a couple months.
Mhm.
It may not be one pill that you take and then like you start to feel better, because a lot of these things have been a lifetime or 5, 10, 20 years of building up to this. So the amazing thing is the body's so resilient that a lot of times it could be better in a couple weeks, in a
Mhm.
couple months, depending how bad it is. And then like the worst case scenarios usually are a couple years, but not in the type of medicine that we're dealing with. That's more the functional side. Longevity medicine, we're able to get people on track often within weeks or worst case months. And usually the months cases are just because we're maybe dialing in a few parameters. They may have gone from 30% to 60%, but then we needed to adjust some things or add something and get them from that 60 to 80 to 90 or whatnot. Because at the end of the day, we can only do so much. We can't fix people. It takes a partnership between us and our patients to work together. They need to be the ones working on their sleep patterns and getting to bed at a decent time and getting the good quality of sleep. They need to work on the stress in their environment. I get it. We're all, stressed from a million different ways, kids and careers and relationships and money or whatever the case might be. But finding ways to mitigate that and create some separation between those challenges in yourself mentally and physically so that you can be at your best. And so again, the nutrition, the fitness, the stress, all those things come together, and then you add in the hormones, the peptides, and the nutraceuticals and those types of things, and cumulatively that's where we can really start to see amazing results. And I've seen people come to us 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever the age is, and reverse just the way they feel and just knock 20 years off of the way they're feeling or looking. And they're losing weight, they're building muscle, their brain, their libido is all improved. And some people tell us like they're the happiest they've been and the relationships are better. And it's super, it's a lot of fun and fulfilling to see how people's lives change, and we can be a part of that.
That's really exciting. You've tested some of these diets and protocols and supplements on yourself before you recommend them. So walk me through what that actually looked like. Has anyone or has anything you were sure about failed when you tried it, or have you? How does that all go?
Yeah, no, especially things like nutrition, fitness, and whatnot, easy to test. And a lot of times what the industry, say like the fitness industry or whatnot, sometimes they're 5, 10 years ahead of like what's going to be taught like mainstream, and people start talking about it. So I tried, I remember intermittent fasting. I don't know how long it's been, 15 years ago or something now. And at the time there just wasn't as much information. So I started out, I was kind of doing it wrong and learned some of the pitfalls of like how to do it better. And whether it's like peptides, we've had those for, actually the earliest peptide was insulin, so it's been around forever. But
Mm.
though for the longevity purposes and whatnot, we've been doing those for over 10 years. And there's ones out there that I tried myself because on paper it looked great, and the results weren't quite what I had hoped for. And now sometimes it's learning dosings and finding other factors that you have to kind of put with it. The cofactors make it work better. But to be honest, certain peptides just work better for some people and not other people. And so what that's allowed me to do is really, by testing those out, I've gotten a good gauge of what really works. And I like to focus on those ones that I feel very confident in for the majority of people, because at the
Mm.
end of the day, I'm running a business and people pay us to get results, and I want to be able to provide those. So it gives us great insight. And of course, I'm not going to do anything to like, risk my health or anything like that. But I figure I should practice what I preach. And so if I'm going to tell somebody to eat a certain way, exercise a certain way, or take certain hormones and peptides and whatnot, it's good if I have some sort of, insight on that, especially if it's personal insight, so that I can help them get the results that they're looking for.
Well, that just would, I think, would give any patient like so much more confidence in the thought of testing, anything that out like that. So you've built this into a top practice covering a huge stretch of Tampa Bay. What is the hardest part of turning a health philosophy into a business that has to make payroll and, do all the other things that businesses have to do every week? And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, some of it that I had to learn was also partially like getting to know my patients and meeting them where they are, because not everybody's looking for the same thing. Like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I always want the best in everything. I'm a very growth mindset. Every day I just want to get better, all of that. And some people are just looking to have a little bit more energy to play with their kids and have a better relationship with their wife. They maybe are 60 pounds overweight and they're super happy at 30 pounds overweight. And that's okay. And as long as they're in a place where they can be happy, is really trying to learn how to help somebody get to where they want to go, meet them where they are, help them move forward. And then if they want to go all the way to, be a fitness competitor or whatever the case is, great. Like, we'll help you all the way. But if they're really just looking for that little extra oomph to live life and not feel pain or brain fog or feel fatigued all the time, that's okay too. And I think being able to then implement that into systems and processes that we can consistently get people results and have the appropriate follow-up measures, keep people safe and effective. That was the real processes that we had to put into play, and finding ways to meet the masses as well. Like, we have people come to us who they do want to be at the top of their game fitness wise and whatnot, and that's great. But we have to have different options for different people. And so over the years is really just starting to understand who I'm speaking to, how to get that information. I'm kind of a pattern recognition guy. I come from an engineering background in my undergrad. And so it was good just getting the reps and talking to a lot of people. I started to see all the patterns of what are people dealing with, and getting all their intake forms to where it's funny. People come to me and we explain what we do. And, I read through their intakes and they're like, man, I feel like you're reading my mind. And I'm like, well, I did just read your paperwork. And, but that's the point, is that I've spent the time to really, systematize everything we do in our business so that we can get a consistent result out of it. And so I can usually look at intake forms and have a good idea of where we're going to go even before we do labs. The labs is more of a confirmation, and sometimes, infects dosing and things like that our practitioners are going to choose.
And I imagine, like, someone who comes to you, you were saying, like, to like play with their kids more, right? Like, that may be like their first step. And then like you feel better and that happens. I imagine their goals adjust too, right? Like, someone who thinks that that's all they want, and then they realize, oh, like,
Yeah,
maybe I could also do this.
I didn't realize I was going to get there. So like, okay, yeah, no, 100% that happens. We see people go from just, I want to lose a little weight, to next time they're like, well, can I put on some muscle? And now I want to run this, like, half marathon and do this, and it's performance based, type of things. So it's cool to watch. Sometimes people come in and we're like, we don't even recognize them anymore because we're like, who is this person? Like, oh my gosh, they look great, and they started out like overweight and just kind of looking older, and now they look younger and super fit, and it's amazing. And, a lot of people think that longevity medicine and hormone therapy, and it's all about like bodybuilding and all that. And, it does get used in that community, and usually it's at super physiological doses and whatnot. But the reality is, a lot of people, if it's up to the person, like if they want to put in the work in the gym and eating right and doing all the things, then we're giving them a foundation for that to be possible. But, I have friends who are in the bodybuilding industry and whatnot, and the best ones are the ones who actually a lot of times take some of the least amount of, let's just call it like performance enhancing meds. And it's because what they're actually hyper focused on is their health. And then, yeah, of course, some of them at the top level are taking some extra stuff that we don't get into, but the reality is that their first priority was their health, their sleep, the toxins in their environment, doing blood work and understanding what's going on with their labs, and things like peptides, and using those, intelligently. And I've been amazed at some of the best ones. Their blood work is impeccable because they are so dialed in with everything that they're doing. So it can be, you can have the best of both worlds if you really put the work in.
Well, and also, like, if you think about it, like, as you age, people work so hard, they save their money, they retire, and like what would be the worst thing, right? That you can't go do anything anymore. You can't go see the world or whatever the thing is, you play with your grandchildren, whatever it was you wanted to do. And like that would be kind of the saddest thing, right? So like just to be able to, whatever those goals are that you had set, like yeah, like if bodybuilding is your thing, that's cool, I guess. But like, just like if you just want to be able to sit on a flight across the Atlantic, like that is like that, and be able to walk around Italy or something, like that's probably more like what most people I think
For
are probably
sure.
thinking
And that
about.
is the majority of our people. The weight loss is usually the more the priority for a lot of people. And we're in Tampa, so we get people who definitely want to look fit. But I think coming back to like my mother's situation, a lot of times my efforts are to try to help her. She's still deals, I think she's exposed to mold again, actually. And it's the hormones, she's getting into her late 70s now. It's the mobility and the energy and the pain and those types of things that definitely keeps me motivated in trying to find the latest and greatest. Soon we're going to be rolling out regenerative medicine and bringing in things like stem cells and exosomes and all that. So I'm excited because I think she's a candidate for that, actually. And there's peptides that we have that are great at that as well, depending how much somebody needs help with like joint pain and repairing. I actually had a torn shoulder earlier this year, and I never got surgery. I actually just did a peptide of ours called the Wolverine peptide. It's a blend of two different peptides, and I never had to get surgery. I just took a break. I wasn't able to really exercise, but I rested and took this peptide right into the joint, and it got better.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's awesome. So let me just ask a little bit more about like your team. So when you're bringing someone onto your medical team, what are you screening for beyond their credentials? Like what makes someone a fit now for your practice?
Really, culture is a huge thing for us. We rely on each other. It's fast paced. There's a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of patience. For us, having somebody that's bought into that, one of my favorite core values that I've had for about 10 years was don't suck at your job. And it kind of stemmed off of we were dealing with some vendors that phrase kind of came out as like they were sucking at their job. And so then we were like, well, we can't suck at our job. And then it ended up sticking. And really what that means, the principle behind it is to have pride in your work. And so I always look for people who seem to care about the output. Like, it's not just say you go to a restaurant, like not just that I gave you your order. It's, is it good? Is it cooked right? Do you like the flavor? Like all those things, are you happy? And if we have pride and care about the results that we're giving, then to me, that's one of the foundation pieces for running a successful business. I just can't understand how somebody wouldn't do that. Or it's like, then find something else to do.
Right.
Because that's the whole point of, if you're going to do something, do it right. And that's how I was raised. And so that's those core values, somebody who aligns with, practice what we preach and deliver maximum value and results and not sucking at their job. Those are all things that we really look for when somebody's coming on board. And, if they have a passion for our industry, that's obviously a huge advantage as well. Seen over the years, as long as they're not on the wrong side of that spectrum, it's really cool to watch. It doesn't matter where somebody is on their journey. When they join our team, their interest in their health and just their health in general tends to elevate just being in that environment. And so I appreciate that. Their eating habits, they're going to the gym, all these little things. And so I love to watch that.
That must be fun to watch.
Yeah.
So you're clearly betting that the way we do medicine is going to change, like in America in general. So 20 years out from now, what do you think a normal doctor's visit is going to look like? And how much of what you do now will just be considered like normal?
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool to think about. I think with a couple things, with the testing getting easier, say like at home blood testing and whatnot, which we're looking to have soon, the wearables, and just with AI and all these things, I think what's really cool in where I expect things to go is that we're going to have such a understanding of what's happening with our body because of all the testing and wearables and such, that we're going to be able to catch things a lot earlier in the process And I mean, the way it's looking, we're probably going to be going into some sort of robot or something. We'll already have our testing and all our data. It will be uploaded, but I do hope and expect that humans are going to stay in the loop on that. And we're going to have still a doctor that you can meet with in those cases where you really need the help and support. But I think really preventative is going to be the key, and where we're going to see a lot less of the sick care system that we're in. That's at least my hope, and what everything kind of we're about is the focus is that we're longevity medicine is ultimately preventative. It's making your body as healthy as it can be for as long as it can be, and that ultimately is going to end up a lot less visits to the doctor. So I think that's going to be mainstream what we're doing, because people are going to care about like feeling good and being healthier for a longer period of their life.
That's really going to have such an impact on, like, I think that also the costs of healthcare that people talk about all the time, the cost of insurance, all those things, like if people could just be healthier. So this year, BioDesign was acquired by Agentis Longevity, which puts everything you built into a national stage. And that's a real milestone, of course. Congratulations. But here's what I want to know. So when this bigger platform comes in, how do you scale this without losing the thing that made it work in the first place, and the personalized, look you in the eye, root cause care? And so, like, what do you protect no matter what? And then what also is like the benefits of being part of this like larger group?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things when we partnered with Agentis was getting to know them and what their core values were, and we were really aligned with the way they approach medicine and healthcare and longevity and whatnot. So that was a huge portion for us to feel like we're going to be able to sustain what we're about, and being able to make sure that we're going to be able to offer patients the personal touch, the attention that they're going to want, and ultimately the results. I see a lot of people getting into this industry, and they have been. There's tons of longevity practices around, and it doesn't mean though that everybody is getting the same level of care for their patients, and you can prescribe somebody testosterone, but if it's cookie cutter and everybody's getting the same dose, that just doesn't work. And it's actually dangerous in some circumstances where they can have side effects, or they're just not getting the results. And then it's like, well, then what's the point? And so we're really customized about our, we personalize every protocol for each person. And while it's nice that there, again, are patterns, and we tend to see a lot of the same scenarios. So it makes it easy for us to find what does this person need. And in my eyes, I think it's pretty easy once you've been doing it long enough. But so I think at the end of the day, it's having that personalization and that personal touch, that interaction that, hey, if I've got a question, a health goal, a concern about my health, that they can contact us and they can connect with one of our performance coaches, or sometimes even me, and that, regardless, they're going to be able to get that level of care where they feel like it's kind of like concierge. And I believe there's two parts to that question. Would I get the other part? What
Yeah.
was
Well, just
the Agentis?
just with Agentis, like the additional benefits that you're
Yeah,
gonna be
the
able to
benefits, that's what it
offer.
was. And so with Agentis, I'm really excited about their just vision long term for how we can make longevity medicine more affordable and more available to the masses. And that's something that we kind of had the reach here in Tampa that we have, and trying to find that like price point that we can run a business, but it makes sense for as many people as possible. And Agentis has been able to help us bridge that gap in a lot of ways, where we're going to be able to offer longevity testing in our programs at affordable prices. The peptides, the hormones, everything that we're doing is going to be able to be something that I think a lot of people can integrate into their lifestyle at a affordable price, and with amazing results, not just kind of that entry level type of care, but really advanced testing and peptides and hormones and whatnot. So I think as a collective, our resources are really helpful. And our CEO and executive team are really out there pushing the envelope as far as integrating with, the government and just sports initiatives and all types of things, that this is just a lot of fun to watch where things are going, because it's moving fast, and we're expecting a lot of great things in the pipeline that I know we're working behind the scenes that haven't even launched yet, but hopefully as the rest of this year rolls out, we're going to be able to offer significantly more than we're already offering, that people are going to be excited about.
That's going to be great, because I think that's what you hear a lot, is that people say, like they would want to do this, but sometimes the costs, or their idea of what the cost would be.
Yeah.
And then once they actually hear now things that would be available to them at an affordable cost, they're shocked sometimes that they could afford to do things that they thought were not. And it's also like, when you really think about the costs of the care, if you don't do it, it's like you're going to pay it one way or the other. So you might as well
Enjoy.
They can't be healthy when you're paying.
Yeah, and sometimes it's worse. If you on the backside, what you're paying for,
Right.
not only did you not have the quality of life, but it may be 10x what you're paying for that.
Exactly. So Tampa Bay has become a real hub of health, longevity, and wellness care. So why do you think it's here? And what role do you want BioDesign to play in that as this region grows? in
Yeah,
healthcare?
so I would say that I think whenever we're in this environment of warm beach culture or whatever, people tend to pay a lot of attention to their health and fitness, kind of like California does and whatnot. But so I think that's been part of it. And then we also are in Florida, and we do get people coming to retire here, or a lot of people moving here from other places after COVID and whatnot. And I think some of that people start to realize, like through the early part of our conversation, I don't want to get older and not enjoy my life. And so a lot of people here are really focused in on looking the best, feeling the best for as long as possible. It just ends up making for a happier, healthier life. And so I think that's ultimately why Tampa's, heading or in that direction already. And then on top of that, I think BioDesign's footprint, we've already established a tremendous, reputation here. And right now it's really just about getting the name out to the masses and letting people know about all the quality options that we are rolling out with our longevity testing. We have something really cool called the LQ. It's kind of, think about like IQ, your intelligence. But this is your longevity quotient. It's kind of like your longevity test and get a score. And it helps people to really gauge, how am I doing? We don't really know. It's like, hey, I feel fine, or I look fine, but are you, or are the metrics that scientifically have been proven to give people longer, healthier lives? Are you good in those categories? And sometimes we're surprised. The people who look the best sometimes are not very healthy on the inside. And, through some lab testing and different types of equipment that we carry, we can start doing those types of things. And then, on top of that, of course, we talked about the regenerative medicine, the hormones, the peptides, the nutraceuticals, those types of things. All these things put together, I really think as BioDesign's name continues to grow, that we're going to really be able to impact the Tampa Bay community. And then we have people who've actually traveled to us from other places as well. And we're looking forward to just helping as many people as we can.
That's really wonderful. So if someone's listening right now and they feel dismissed by their doctors, tired, unwell, told their labs are normal, but they know something's wrong, what do you want to say directly to them right now?
Yeah, I would say, at the end of the day, there's one person who's responsible for your health, and it's you, because no doctor can actually make you better. You have to take that responsibility. Now, you want to find a practitioner that you can work as a partner for your health, and they can guide you and they can show you the blind spots and teach you about maybe what you don't know. But it's important to have that line of communication with your provider, because at the end of the day, even for us, we can look at labs, we can do all this fancy testing, and it's super helpful. And a lot of times we get it right, but we still don't know, like, how are you feeling? Like, is your energy at a 7? Okay, well, this told us that you were good in a lot of your inflammatory markers, your heart's good, your testosterone's good, all these things are great. But like, how's your brain working? Like, are you able to focus during the day? And yes, we have a cognitive test too. And on top of all that, and we can get metrics, but there's still just that extra layer of you. And so it's important to be able to communicate your goals, your needs, your concerns with your provider, and have a provider that actually is listening and going to do something about it.
That's really great. So, Jimmy, before we go, we have what we call our lightning round, which is the same three questions we ask everyone. So there's no wrong answer. So anything you want to say. So the first question is, what would you consider your hype song or your walk-up music if you're a baseball player? So do you have a song that
I guess if it was that type of thing, it'd probably be something from like a Rocky soundtrack, Eye of the Tiger, or something of that nature.
That's great. Great choice. What is your current favorite Tampa Bay restaurant?
Restaurant. Ooh, what is it? Boulogne, I think is what it's called. That one is just a fun one to go check out. It's, down there and all the action, and it's got a good vibe. So I'd say that's definitely up there.
And then finally, what is the best business gift you've ever received?
Wow. I would just say it wasn't a tangible gift, but just mentorship that I've gotten was really, I've had a few pieces of business advice throughout the years, and some of them have been long-term relationships. Some of them have been just kind of, here and there type things. And I would say just having the advice from mentors has really had the most impact on like my business. And so if somebody doesn't have a mentor, that's one of the fastest ways to learn. And, find the most successful person that you can basically, and learn as much as you can from them. And that is going to be the best like gift and advice that you get.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jimmy, so much. This was really great. Thank you. We really appreciate having you.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was Jimmy Barker. I opened today by saying most of medicine is built to manage you being unwell, not to make you well. Whether or not you buy that fully, you have to respect a man who nearly lost his mother to a system and decided to spend his life building the alternative. What I'll remember from this conversation is that he won't recommend anything that he hasn't put his own body through first. In a wellness industry full of big promises, that kind of skin in the game is rare. And watching what he built in Tampa grow into something national tells you the market is hungry for it too. If today gave you something to think about, follow the Bay Builds wherever you listen, and share this episode with someone who's been told that their labs are normal, but knows they just don't feel right. I'm Tracie Domino, and I'll see you next time.